Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the UDC Research 2021 Research Week. My name is Victor McCrary. I'm the Vice President for Research and Graduate Programs and Vice Chair of the National Science Board. It is my pleasure that during this week, we have a keynote speaker address, which will be given by Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan. It is my pleasure to introduce him because Dr. Panchanathan is the 15th NSF Director and also was a colleague on the National Science Board, which oversees the National Science Foundation. And he comes to us before that as an Executive Vice President at Arizona State University. In the announcement that we've set out, you can read a lot about from his bio about the accomplishments that he's done and the honorifics that he's received. But I'm going to just take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about things that are not in his bio that are really important. More importantly, he is a leader and an innovator for the moment and the time that we are at in our country. He is developing a strategy at NSF and working closely with the National Science Board. And I want to give kudos to our chair, Dr. Ellen Ochoa, and my colleagues. As we put out Vision 2030 last year, he is developing a strategy that is around that as he tries to elevate and include the state of science and engineering for the United States of America. When you meet Dr. Panchanathan, you're full of energy because he brings full of energy and commitment. I'm not sure if he's a coffee drinker, but when I sit down with him, I'm already thinking I've had 3 cups of coffee because he brings such enthusiasm, such commitment, and passion to what he's going to talk about. Today, in talking about expanding science and engineering and giving the recent current events, we're all talking about a great day for America because we now are at a Sputnik 2 moment where we need to bring in and develop domestic diverse STEM talent as part of the NSB vision. I want to give thanks to my colleagues all across UDC, but also all of the folks who are viewing in from our nation's historically Black colleges and universities, as well as our partners and allies from across, particularly my colleagues who are the vice presidents for research and the vice chancellors for research who have supported this endeavor. I also want to thank Dr. Panchanathan and his team at NSF for making this possible. So, without further ado, as we kick off midweek, this important key address for UDC Research Week 2021 and for our HBCU research community, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan, who's going to talk about the future of competitiveness, the vital role that our nation's HBCUs play in building a robust science and engineering enterprise.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCrary. This is truly a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to you for inviting me to do this. And my thanks to the University of the District of Columbia for putting this series together. This is phenomenal. I was looking through the speakers this week. It's truly a testament to the unbelievable leadership efforts that you are bringing to not only UDC, but also to the entire HBCU community, and more important to the nation, through your fantastic leadership that you're exercising through as Vice Chair of the National Science Board. It has been truly a privilege and an honor working with you in the National Science Board and now having this relationship as NSF Director with the leadership of the board. So thank you so much for all that you do to advance science technology, and you're relentless, constantly working so hard for making sure that we have access and opportunity for everyone in this nation. And that's something that you know, that you and I cherish and want to make happen very, very quickly. So thank you all so much who have joined today. Thanks to all the leadership of the HBCUs who are with us today. I can tell you we have got a great future ahead of us because of your leadership, your commitment, your energy, and what you're bringing to the table in terms of making sure that the ideas and talent that is immensely present in HBCUs is truly reflected in the prosperity of the nation that we are all seeking together. So I'm just going to take a minute to fire off my presentation here, and then we'll walk through the slides and also have a conversation following that. So let me do that. Are you all able to see my slides?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And so with that, I will start my presentation. So I can tell you, I'm truly delighted, as I said, to be with all of you. So this title that was presented is what we are about in terms of advancing the future of our nation through the research enterprises. And today we are focused intensely on how HBCUs are contributing and will contribute into the future, and how it is our responsibility to ensure that that opportunity to exercise the ideas and talent that is present, in droves in various HBCUs need to be brought to the front. And that's our responsibility, and I take that very, very seriously as director of NSF. When we look at the mission of NSF, you look at the mission of NSF laid out by Vannevar Bush in 1950, a visionary. And if you look at the three important components of the vision: promoting the progress of science, advancing the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and securing the national defense. This has stood the test of time because it is so fundamental to the progress of our nation's economic and societal prosperity, and therefore will stand the test of time as we move into the future. I call it strengthening at speed and scale as we are thinking about the future. And so when you look at this, as Dr. McCrary pointed out, the vision of NSF that we have outlined is highly synergistic with the National Science Board 2030 vision, as well as the amazing vision that has been laid out by Harris-Biden administration. President Biden has put forth the 4 pillars, and I will come to that in a minute. As I talk about the vision of NSF, it has got 3 central pillars, fundamental pillars. The first pillar is advancing the frontiers of research into the future. The central pillar, literally the center of the attention here, is how do we ensure accessibility and inclusivity? And that when we're advancing the frontiers of research into the future by looking at the decades, the 7 decades of amazing progress that NSF has unleashed all across our nation, we need to make sure that that progress, which we are trying to strengthen at speed and scale, cannot, must not, and should not leave any talent behind. And we cannot for any more not have the talent across our broad socioeconomic spectrum of our nation, across the broad racial spectrum of our nation, across the broad geographic spectrum of our nation, that it's got to be fully included, fully brought to life. And that's our responsibility collectively. And so ensuring accessibility and inclusivity is a central pillar of my vision for NSF as we move into the future. And a third pillar, securing global leadership, therefore, is about working together with like-minded partners, partners who share our values of transparency, reciprocity, research integrity, and a whole lot more. So when we have common shared values, shared aspirations, and trust, then we can build strong partnerships, and we can then co-lead with like-minded partners in ensuring this global leadership mindset. And that when we do all of these, the fundamental core of all of this is partnerships. And that's why I'm so excited to be with all of you today, because partnerships in every form, of every shape, of every type is required to ensure that we can actually succeed in our mission, so that we might strengthen at speed and scale. And that partnership, which is of many kinds, most importantly, working with all of you to ensure that the central pillar of prosperity that we are seeking together must happen, and must happen very, very quickly. And so when you look at this, as I said, this vision, you find that this vision is perfectly aligned. This is a unique moment, a moment where the NSB Vision 2030 that was put together, outlining that we have to have research benefits for our nation. We have to unleash STEM talent across our great nation. We have to have the geography of innovation everywhere across our great nation. And that we have to think like a global science and engineering community in the things that we aspire to do and aspire to achieve. And when you look at the NSF vision that I just outlined, and when you look at the administration pillars, the 4 pillars of pandemic response, of economic recovery, of racial equity and climate change are all highly synergistic and symbiotic. And therefore, we can all work together as one team, ensuring that we achieve this progress for our nation. So when I look at this moment that I talked about, this moment, notwithstanding the fact that COVID has challenged us all, but also taught us a lot of important lessons of how people are being left behind, of how treatment in equitable terms are not as we think it should be, or sometimes even that we think it is. There are unacceptable situations that we see every day that has to be addressed. And that addressing that will be through prosperity, through unleashing prosperity, ensuring that we are inclusive in every part of our DNA, thinking about how we advance into the future. And when you take the defining moment of COVID, but then the defining moments that are characterizing us in terms of moving into the future are the global competition that is in front of us. The global competition has not been as intense as it is today. Since when has global competition been anything other than motivating us, inspiring us, challenging us to do better, to do more, to be more excellent? And that's what this moment is calling us to do. And I say that that cannot be done unless the second part of this characterization or the feature, which is the missing millions of talent, is addressed right away. We cannot, as I said, continue to operate where domestic talent is not brought out at speed and scale across all demographics. And that, I say this, that global talent should not be substitutive to domestic talent. That global talent should be augmentative to domestic talent. That domestic talent unleashed at full force and full scale, augmented with global talent unleashed at full force and full scale, and welcome at full force and full scale. Both of them are needed to work together in order for us to achieve this future that we are all seeking. And I can tell you, walking through the halls, the corridors of Congress, of the Hill, talking to senators and House members and staffers, I can tell you with absolute certainty that there is true bipartisan support for advancement of the future of our nation, advancing the geography of innovation, advancing the equity and inclusion across our nation. All of these are principles that has total bipartisan support in terms of moving into the future. And therefore, this moment becomes a unique moment for us to take hold of and see how we can take NSF to be that entity that unleashes both the talent and ideas across our nation, and therefore prosperity, both in societal and economic terms, working in partnership, of course, with other agencies and entities. And you're going to hear about that a little bit more. So the first thing that I would talk about is, this logo of NSF. If you think of it as 7 decades of unbelievable accomplishments by NSF, there are many components that we are emphasizing and ensuring that we are moving into the future. These are some examples that I'm going to discuss with you to communicate that and put also context to it. Curiosity-driven research is the bedrock of what NSF is. It's something that we all take pride in terms of advancing into the future. NSF is very unique as an agency in unleashing the curiosity-driven research. I call it the curiosity-driven, discovery-based explorations that NSF has been unleashing for several decades. But now we need to do more and better. And therefore, in that context, HBCUs are an important part of driving new and exciting research. Let me give you a few examples. Even in the curiosity realm, I can talk about examples in every realm because HBCUs are contributing immensely, as I said. For example, the NSF-funded partnership to enhance LIGO education and outreach at the LIGO Livingston and Southern University of Baton Rouge is one example. This program involves professional development for in-service teachers at LIGO Livingston, preparation of pre-service teachers at Southern and Southern undergraduates acting as docents at LIGO Livingston. So this is one example of how HBCU is contributing among the many, many, many examples. Let me give you another example. A project between two HBCUs, Prairie View, A&M, and Texas Southern University, is strengthening the theoretical foundation of big data analytics and developing a novel deep learning software package based on this enhanced foundation. Some of the goals of this project are to improve the understanding and explainability of deep neural networks and increase the computational efficiency that the deep learning process should have through new algorithms, and that happens at scale. This project is also looking at how to implement deep learning research through new software packages that can be deployed in high-performance computing platforms. I tell you, there is so much that we can take pride in terms of the contributions of HBCUs to this fundamental mission of propelling curiosity-driven research. Now, we need to get more of that enabled and empowered, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we move through the presentation here. I look at the emerging opportunities as another mechanism by which we can do more. For example, this COVID challenge is also a moment of opportunity. And at NSF, we took the $75 million that came through the CARES Act, and we augmented that to be a lot more than that. We have spent over $200 million just addressing specific projects through our eager and rapid programs, so that we might take the decades of unbelievable scientific discoveries and bring them to fruition for addressing this pandemic at hand. We have over 1,000 research projects that are doing unbelievable work in terms of taking this emerging opportunity and delivering, so that we might be more proactive than reactive in the future, but at the same time taking care of the situation at hand that is there now. I can again give you many examples on that front. For example, in the RAPID program, we have been able to advance quickly at the University of the District of Columbia, UDC, right at the host institution. A RAPID project on visualization, analysis, and prediction of COVID-19, that project abbreviated as VAPOC, is focused on understanding why the Black community has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is an exceedingly important thing that we need to understand. We all know that there is a disproportionate effect and impact on individuals and institutions of certain demographics. And we all know that the Black community is struggled a lot through this process of trying to cope with this pandemic. And so we need to do everything that we can to understand and respond better. And so that we might do better in the future in terms of such situations. Hopefully they won't happen too often. And another RAPID award that was given to Tuskegee University. There, the researchers are focused on studying how minority communities learn about and respond to public health guidance around the COVID-19 pandemic. The past year, you all know, has shown us how critically important it is for all communities, including underrepresented minority communities, to have access to trustworthy and information about how to prevent and contain the spread of diseases like COVID-19. So their research at Tuskegee will help create future public health awareness campaigns that can reduce mistrust of medical information. Later on, I'm going to talk more about specific ways that NSF is building pathways into the STEM community and strengthening inclusivity. But I want to highlight that NSF's approach to broadening participation reflects our fundamental mission. We rely on research and evidence-based approaches to help guide how we advance. We know that historically Black colleges and universities have proven to be extremely effective in graduating Black students, particularly in STEM fields. In fact, HBCUs represents 7 of the top 8 institutions that graduate the highest number of Black undergraduate students who go on to earn science and engineering doctorates. For example, in recognition of this success and in an effort to discover what can be learned from HBCUs, in 2020, NSF launched the HBCU STEM Undergraduate Success Research Center. The center is led by Morehouse College, Spelman College, and Virginia State University, and is studying successful practices for broadening participation at 50 HBCUs to develop evidence-based interventions for transforming education nationwide. So there are many, many such examples, as I said, in every topic that we can talk about. As we look at other exemplar projects that we're advancing at NSF, the research centers, these are conceptualizations of people working across disciplines, across institutions, even across the globe, and partnering with entities like industry and other agencies to work on specific problems that is important for humanity and society. And that they have curiosity-driven research enablement and enrichment at the same time as outcome-oriented projects that advance, as I said, society and economy and more. So there are currently 60 research centers, engineering research centers, science and technology centers, physics frontier centers, chemical innovation centers, material science engineering research centers, and a whole lot more across our nation. And there are many, many partnerships of HBCUs and leadership role. And I want to see at NSF many, many more HBCU-led research centers, and then partnering with other institutions and lifting all institutions up. And HBCU universities can be leaders and pioneers in those ideas that you have, which are contextualized to the place and the problems that people are facing across our nation, and therefore be very successful in terms of unleashing those through these center level programs. When I look at even the ERC announcements that were made recently, the engineering center announcements that you see here, every one of those topics, as you can see, that has been funded, the 4 of them that were funded in the recent cycle, you will see are all tackling problems that are fundamental to human progress. And so this is an exceedingly important point, whether it is the ERC for the Internet of Things for precision agriculture, or roadway electrification, or preservation of biological systems or quantum networks. We know that we can work on problems that actually has an impact. And when you then look at the other conceptualization that NSF has been advancing on, which is the AI institutes. Last year, when I came into the agency, the AI Institutes program that was about to be launched, and 7 new institutes that were going to be funded, I said AI has to be not just AI in a few places in our nation. It has got to be in every state, every region. It cannot be limited to certain regions because we think that's where AI expertise is. That is not acceptable. I told them AI is going to be AI in every state. And the first 7 AI institutes, a couple of them in partnership with the Department of Transportation, Homeland Security. In fact, 2 of them were co-funded by USDA NIFA. They involve 20 states, partnership with industry, partnership with 7 MSIs, including Tuskegee University as a partner. I want to see more of that. I want to see more leadership of AI institutes by HBCU institutions. I know the talent is there. I know the ideas are there. I know it can be done. And we have to work hard at that. And so this concept of AI in every state, replace AI by anything, that is how we should be thinking about it. Why? Because AI talent at K-12 level, at community college level, at 4-year college level, at research university level, at the entrepreneurial level, at industry collaboration level, you name it, or the community level. It needs to be everywhere. And that's how we need to progress as a nation. And I'm deeply, deeply committed to that. And therefore, when you look at the next 8 institutes that are coming out, in fact, one of them made possible because we've pre-wired a partnership with Google, Amazon, Accenture, and Intel in terms of a $20 million investment by them so that one more institute can be launched, so that we can start to rapidly build at speed and scale this AI concept across our nation. But it is not just AI. So is quantum. When we launched the quantum institutes, I said we should have a national quantum platform that a 5th grader or an 8th grader from rural Alabama should be able to dial in because they've got that STEM spark and the STEM spirit that they should be able to go and get excited by that. And that STEM talent can be developed everywhere, everywhere. And so we have to think that way. We have to act that way. We cannot be preferentially in few locations because we think somehow the talent is only there, or ideas are only there. I'm not suggesting we are, but we cannot let ourselves to be led that way. And then when I came to the agency, I said, with the pandemic, what we have learned is that we need to be much more resilient in a proactive way, resilient to pandemics, resilient to natural hazards, resilient to economic disruptions, and a whole lot more. So that we have to build this concept of resilience in every form across the agency. And therefore, by launching those programs, that the entire nation is now building its efforts through the ideas and talent and becoming even more resilient. And likewise, biotech and bioeconomy has got so much promise and potential to lead us, in terms of moving forward into the future. We all know that about 12 months ago, about a year ago, all of you pivoted from face-to-face learning to learning through distance mode and the virtual mode. And you're all doing a fantastic job. Yes, there are challenges, but there are also innovations that you are coming up with that really is taking us in terms of being in the vanguard of how learning outcomes can be achieved. But it is also telling us something else. It's teaching us something else. It's teaching us that talent can be reached anywhere. Talent can be nurtured anywhere and everywhere. And so we know that we have platforms that we should make possible. And therefore, I have said that rural broadband is something that should be a priority. We just 2 weeks ago launched the project Overcome with 7 test beds in partnership with Smith Futures, a philanthropic organization. We have a power program in our engineering directorate launching rural test beds, wireless test beds, cellular test beds, so that, and in partnership with industry, so that we might have the access through infrastructure and what we can do to deliver this rich outcomes in terms of learning outcomes. So let's take this moment. But in doing all of this, we all know that we have to be very mindful that we are led by social behavioral sciences and values, humanistic values, that becomes the underpinning of everything that we do. Let's take AI, for example. AI has been 7 decades of consistent investment by NSF, and we are talking about technologies here across our nation. And a lot of possibilities exist. But guess what? We have problems of implicit bias, unacceptable. We have problems of privacy, security, ethics, and a whole lot more. We need to make sure that technology development does not happen in isolation. The technology development is built with the underpinning and the core of ensuring that social behavioral sciences is part of our thinking in everything that we do. And therefore, when you look at these circles, these are exemplars of activities that NSF is advancing into the future. But I can tell you, while each of them may appear like they are part of one directorate or the other, or led by one directorate or other, I can assure you, all these activities are all working together. The directorates working together. Let's take, for example, quantum. Quantum is a partnership between mathematical physical sciences directorate, engineering directorate, science directorate, and a whole lot more. AI is a partnership of all directorates. So we have to make sure that partnership starts right at home. That at NSF, we are partnering across directorates so that when we unleash these programs and priorities, that then brings people together across disciplines, across institutions, and makes things possible in its fullest form. So therefore, I want to assure you that when you're looking at these exemplar projects and the NSF progress over the last 7 decades, we are getting into a future of that progress, expanding at speed and scale, strengthening at speed and scale. And that's what we need at this time for our nation to be able to unleash all the potential and ideas. Now, the first part of that, therefore, is people. People and talent is what gets it done. That is a central activity that we need to be focused on. And that's what NSF, again, is very unique, because we have the ability, the mandate, the resources that we are putting in to ensure that we are getting our people empowered, endowed, enriched, and nurtured with ideas and talent that we are going to bring forth for the nation. But in that process, we know there are huge challenges. While we want to inspire generations of talents, communities of talent everywhere across the nation, we all know the reality. The reality is we are nowhere near where we should be. The missing millions, or making the invisible visible, is something that we all need to put a lot of energy, effort. I call it intentionality with intensity. This is not an acceptable thing when you look at this graphic. It cannot be this way. It's got to change, and change fast. And so this missing millions of talent, there are many, many barriers to entry for many people, especially Black people and other minorities trying to join science and technology fields. And you are all fully aware of that. And you're working so hard, for which NSF is so grateful. And so we want to partner with you to make sure that we are able to make a difference fast and at scale. And therefore, we are going to be working with you in addition to what we are doing already. For example, last August, Dr. Sean Jones, our NSF's Assistant Director for the Mathematics and Physical Sciences Directorate, MPS Directorate, moderated a panel discussion at NSF on Black lives and science. In the panel, participants described how they became interested in science and engineering. And one thing that came out very clearly, which is not a surprise to any one of you, is early exposure is critical. Support from teachers and educators is also critical. Panelists also described the challenges that they encountered personally. These are personal stories that are very powerful. They experienced racism and sexism as well as unconscious bias. They recounted how they were treated differently from their colleagues in their workplaces, as well as in social settings like conferences. Unacceptable. These are some of the conditions we must change to achieve equity for everyone in the science and engineering community. So therefore, at NSF, we are making this a priority. And thanks for the amazing leadership of Dr. McCrary, who's constantly at this as a leader, moving this forward with us. It's truly a great partnership of a person, a committed leader to wanting to make sure that this change happens fast and at scale. So shortly after I became the NSF director last July, I established a racial equity task force so that we will be able to have a better understanding of the internal and external barriers to advancement that African Americans face in science and engineering fields. I said, this is not acceptable. The National Science Board, under the leadership of Dr. McCrary, held a panel on how to double the number of African Americans in the science and engineering enterprise by 2030. We should do even more. Within NSF directorates, our staff are making a point of learning more about how to achieve greater participation and expand inclusion. Some examples include presentations to the Environmental Research and Education Advisory Committee. We call it the Advisory Committee, ERE, and the Geosciences Advisory Committee, or the Advisory Committee, GEO. These are just but small, early steps, and we know much more needs to be done, and we are going to be intensely focused on that. This is a critical time to ensure that all the talent from underrepresented groups and the nation can be part of science and technology community. They need to be part of this community at speed and scale. And this need for STEM talent, as we know, is only growing across the nation. So when we talk about inspiring talent everywhere that I presented to you in the previous slide, broadening participation has been an agency-wide focus at NSF. In 2016, the agency made inclusivity one of its 10 big ideas for the future of investment when it launched the Includes Initiative, a large-scale program of alliances that are building collaborative infrastructure to accelerate the spread and finding innovative solutions for inclusivity. What that means is that efforts that successfully increase participation by underrepresented groups do not remain one-time and should not remain one-time success stories confined to the classroom or the school or the community where they are originally implemented. Instead, they become starting points. That I underscore that point, starting points for other institutions and communities to learn from. NSF Includes is building networks that are spreading best practices and proven approaches for bringing diverse talent into STEM fields. One of those NSF Includes Alliances program I want to highlight is iGen, the Inclusive Graduate Education Network. This is a partnership of more than 30 scientific societies, institutions, organizations, corporations, and national laboratories that are committed to increasing the number of Black, Latino, and Indigenous students who receive bachelor's and doctoral degrees. They are tackling key areas that end up being choke points for underrepresented groups. They're improving mentoring of young researchers to ensure that there is guidance and advice on how to advance their education and careers. They're making changes to graduate admission processes to ensure fair consideration. They're focusing on recruitment to ensure that more students see the opportunities to undertake graduate studies. And they're also working to improve graduate retention rates. I'm telling you, the last component is exceedingly important. We need to sustain students from underrepresented groups on their educational journeys. We know that. We know that because we have data points to prove. We know that women and Black and Latino students leave STEM majors at a higher rate. And we know that they're also more likely to leave academic tracks rather than go on to pursue graduate degrees, postdocs, or early career positions, research positions. So one of the ways that NSF does this is through the Louis Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation, known as the LSAM program. This program takes a comprehensive approach to developing and retaining STEM talent from underrepresented communities so that the students can more successfully transition from community colleges to four-year universities and on to graduate programs. The resources, funding, and different initiatives at NSF is deploying to support inclusivity and broadening participation are the seeds for building a STEM community that reflects the whole nation. The alliances and networks that we are building to connect programs and share resources and best practices are key to strengthening these efforts and extending their reach. We need to do a lot better. I keep repeating this, strengthening at speed and scale. But the final piece is the need to institutionalize. I underscore that again. We need to institutionalize these efforts and make them self-sustaining cultures of inclusivity that are embedded within the communities. Again, we need to strengthen at speed and scale on all of that. Because when we invest in supporting outcomes for one cohort of students, we want those benefits to also extend to the next set of students that come through, and the ones after that, and the ones after that, long after NSF funding is no longer necessary. That is how we make sustained progress possible. So when we talk about, therefore, inspiring talent everywhere, there are many, many programs, as I said. I gave you an example of iGen. Clearly, we have to work closely with all of you and the tribal colleges and universities. The LSAM program, the Hispanic Serving Institutions programs, and others. As I said, the way we get that done is partnerships. Partnerships of every type, every form, within the agency, across agencies, literally breaking the ice through partnerships, working directly with industries. I tell you, I've talked to so many companies in the last 9 months that I've been at NSF, swinging my chair to the left, to the right. I go from California to Maine and talk to them, and every one of them is passionate about how we might have more inclusivity, more talent and ideas being brought to life. So the partnerships are of so many types and kinds, as I said, intra-agency, interagency, industry, university, foundations and philanthropy, states and municipalities, K-12, community colleges, and international, and more. In the interest of time, the last thing, I call these the rocket propellants that really launch us at speed and scale. The idea of translating these technologies so that we might have the impact that we all so dearly want our nation to have. Whether it is an I-Core program that sensitizes people to entrepreneurialness, SBIR, STTRs that translates technologies to the marketplace, or ATE programs working with community college students and talent, our industry university research center programs, partnership innovation programs, GOLI and others working with industry, our convergence accelerator kind of ideas that brings together these ideas and see how we can scale them quickly to have impact. And we talked about many center-like programs like ERCs. But in order to get this done, we need innovation ecosystems everywhere, prosperity everywhere. It cannot be in a few places across the nation where we build talent and then they essentially have to go to those places. Every place has got place-based innovation activities so that we might bring the partnerships together to build ecosystems of prosperity everywhere in our nation, every state, every region. And there are unbelievable activities that we can do. And HBCUs can be the leader simply because of the fact that you understand the problems. And therefore, you can conceptualize the solutions better than anybody else. And that we bring willing partners, and that HBCU institutions lead the way, and then build these ecosystems of prosperity. Guess what? When we build these ecosystems of prosperity, it becomes a thing of multiplying and multiplying and multiplying and growing and growing and growing, because more talent gets trained, more talent has in-place opportunities. That makes possible more prosperity, and then brings more talent and ideas in, and this becomes an unbelievably evolving ecosystem of prosperity. And that's what we want. Bell Lab-like entities everywhere. So I have started to articulate this NSF vision in the form of what I call a DNA of NSF. On the one strand is curiosity-driven, discovery-based exploration. On the other strand is use-inspired, solutions-focused translation. Both of them are important, and they're highly synergistic, symbiotic, and intertwined as we advance the prosperity. And both of them are rich at HBCU institutions and can be made further at strength, speed, and scale in the HBCU institutions. There are many, many examples, because when people think about NSF, they think it's only about curiosity-driven research. Quite the contrary. Every problem that we take immediately results in translational outcomes. That translation then makes more exploration possible. This symbiotic relationship, even things like gravitational wave detection, for example. The idea was posited in the 70s. Then we developed the detectors in 1999. The detection happened in 2015. Further exploration happens. And then we are developing quantum sensing capabilities that is used not only for LIGO detection, but for so many other industries. Likewise, the 3D printing of today did not just come about. In the 70s, NSF launched the computer-aided design program. We did the first additive manufacturing award in 86. In 89, we did the strategic manufacturing initiative. And now 3D printing, which has come to really help us in the COVID moment, is all possible because of sustained investments, including things like the Digital Libraries Initiative that we funded a project to graduate students in 94. And in 98, when they submitted the project report, they said that we are founding a company called Google, and we know where Google is. Likewise, Qualcomm was an SBIR project. That's why I say that NSF has got tremendous capacity, potential, because of all the capacity and potential that we have with HBCUs and all the other institutions across our nation, that we can unleash this prosperity that is being asked of us because of this unique moment that I talked about earlier. I'm so thrilled to be with all of you today. I tell you, this is truly exciting to be able to share this with you. So I have 5 main lessons that I would like to come out of the NSF thinking on this issue so far. These ideas, as I said, are emerging partly because of the panel discussion on Black Lives in Science that I mentioned earlier. Let me outline them. First, we need to focus on sharing best practices. When we have research on the policies and approaches that work to support inclusion, that information needs to reach the people who can put it into practice. We need to think about how conferences and other professional opportunities can be a platform for training on implicit bias, cultural norms, and other areas where community needs to improve. Second, we need to make sure that we are utilizing the ideas and programs that already exist. We also need to make sure we are telling the stories of those programs so that they are accessible to a wider audience where they can have broader impact. Third, we need to hold researchers accountable for inclusion activities. How do we know if a program is working? How can we ensure that we are moving forward? Accountability is how we can promote success and measure progress. Fourth, we need to look at policies that can be implemented to effect change. There are a wider range of ideas that can make an impact in a variety of areas. Mentoring is one example where there are numerous ideas for how to implement a program to provide support to young and early career researchers. Diversity plan with metrics to incentivize institutions to increase their diversity metrics is another example. Finally, what we can learn from other institutions and agencies. What can we learn? There are lessons that we can take from how others are working to support diversity. For example, the NIH program for cluster hiring to build faculty cohorts. Or another NIH example, strategic support for postdocs that lead to faculty positions, possibly in new areas. We are going to encounter ideas that are different from what NSF has tried, and that can help us to look at how we can change our own thinking. We should welcome that, about how to support NSF's values and priorities for diversity and inclusion. So I'm so excited to be with all of you today to share some of this and to demonstrate my commitment along with Dr. McCrary's commitment, working together. We are going to do much bigger things, and we need your help. We need your ideas. We need your support. We need your engagement. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Panchanathan. We appreciate everything that you're doing here. This is excellent. I want to go, first of all, I want to also say thank you to your team. I want to say thank you to your colleagues, particularly your assistant directors, folks like Karen Marangel, Sean Jones, Skip Lapia, Dawn Tilbury, Joanne Tornow, Margaret Martinosi, and I hope I haven't forgotten anyone, but your team has done a great job, as well as the team at the National Science Board, led by Ellen Ochoa and our colleagues. What ties you all together besides vision and strategy is courage, because this is what it's just going to take to make this happen. And you have displayed just in your talk today and in our encounters, the courage, the passion, and the mentality that we all must take, that this is about abundance, okay? This is not a zero-sum game, but a plus-sum game, and that we're all ready to work with you. I also want to thank the BEA organization who sponsors the HBCU VPR Forum and also the Military Stars and Stripes. They stand ready to help you, Dr. Panchanathan. So with that, what I'd like to do is give you the first question that has come in, and that is, do you imagine NSF having a program, and I think you talked about this briefly, like NIH, which for a period of time will pay for administrative staff in offices and sponsored programs, because many of these offices are understaffed and thus inhibit HBCUs from competing for research grants?
Excellent question. Dr. McCrary, you and I have talked about this, and this is exceedingly important. When we talk about scaling and taking the ideas that is at HBCU institutions so that they might then achieve the level of leadership and making sure that the impact is generated at scale, we need to recognize the need to provide some sort of SOR style support. Now, whether it is at each institution or whether a shared resource on a sort of a local basis or regional basis or a state basis or a city basis, we need to definitely look into every possible structure that we can think about. But the underpinning of what you said is absolutely true. We need to have SOR offices so that this is something that is certainly in the minds at NSF. It's all about building capacity. We know that. And I also understand that people need the depth of personnel and the time to engage in some of these activities. So I will tell you, Dr. McCrary, that we need your help in figuring out what kind of approaches are going to get us to where we need to be with HBCUs. Do we need to think about regional networks or whether it should be at individual institutions? This is a process of modeling these kinds of things across the nation. But the fundamental concept that you're suggesting is, or the questioner is suggesting, is absolutely accurate, and we should do that. And this is an undertaking that we should take.
So along those lines, and with the help, I will offer you the help of the BEA HBCU VPR Forum to give you some thought leadership. We have met on many occasions. Another question that dovetails into this, do you imagine a program like EPSCoR being reshaped to include and assist HBCUs in technology commercialization, or as we say now, translation?
Yeah, no, clearly we know that EPSCoR, I always say EPSCoR is icing on the cake. The cake is all of the stuff that NSF has got. I want full participation. That EPSCoR on top of that makes even more things possible. And therefore, I want, and so this SOR question that we talked about, is important, because that's what is going to get the mainstream opportunities at NSF being tapped and led by HBCU institutions, and then augment that with the EPSCoR growth also is going to make things possible. Therefore, I would say that yes, through EPSCoR, but more importantly, with the other aspects of what NSF is putting together, we want to make sure that we have the full attention in terms of commercialization possibilities that is available for HBCU institutions. Because that's how, as I said to the point that I made at the end, if you want to build regional engines of talent and economic development, that will not succeed unless the rich talent and ideas and what they make possible through translational efforts at HBCUs are included. So therefore, we need stronger partnerships between HBCUs and other academic institutions. Dr. McCrary, I will tell you, I spoke to the Association of American Universities Presidents and Chancellors just a couple of days ago. I'm happy to share. I did tell every one of them that you have to look at all the institutions around you so you can have neighborhoods of excellence being brought out across our nation. Excellence is everywhere. And so we need to make sure that we do everything to do that. And so I think I am a strong proponent of strengthening EPSCoR, but also making sure that we're integrating HBCUs and strengthen in every program of NSF.
You know, NSF's Rotator program provides opportunities for faculty from across the nation's universities to understand research, the inner workings of NSF, kind of the research game, by working as program officers. Could such a program be expanded for HBCU administrative staff to work in your grants and contract administration? Because that's an area where HBCUs need, it's an experiential type of discipline and where they can gain more experience. So not only just faculty members, but I'm also talking about people who support in the administration of research.
This is a very, very interesting idea. And, while there may be high entry fee to jumping into the administrative side of the federal government, you know this very well. But this is a very, very interesting and a novel, innovative suggestion that you're making here. And I'm very excited by that. So, what we also do, as you know, workshops and NSF days, which are focused on training and teaching people about NSF and how to write grants, etc. So we can do some targeted sessions that address the unique challenge of HBCU administrative staff and what they face. But this suggestion that you're making is truly novel, and I want to take it back and see how we can work together. Maybe you and I can talk about this more to see how we can co-conspirators work together and see how we can unleash something that might be very valuable.
Well, you know me, Dr. Panchanathan, I like to make good trouble.
You are.
So with that, I'm going to put another thing on your plate that could be interesting also is, again, with helping our HBCUs who provide tremendous innovation and research capacity and can do more. Could there also be opportunities of the other side, what we kind of call a reverse IPA, where maybe members from your team could go out to HBCUs for a semester or a year on a detail, working with the sponsored programs offices and the vice presidents for research in terms of, as you had talked earlier, sharing best practices and being able to make those universities part of the conversation?
That's, again, an excellent suggestion. In fact, you're talking about how we might take NSF talent and connect it more in place. Right. Dr. McCrary, you and I have talked about this a little bit. I believe that NSF should not be just in Washington, D.C. NSF should be everywhere. Now, when you think about that for a moment and think about what that means in terms of seeing how we might have people actually in place from NSF in HBCUs and in various regions, is truly another way of ensuring that NSF's excellence is shared, and therefore mentorship possibilities are there and learning possibilities. It's both ways, you see, because when a program officer spends a year, it's not only what they are delivering, but actually what they are learning on the ground.
Right.
It's one thing to sit in Washington and think that we know and have a few panels and learn. All of that is good, but there is no substitute for actually being in place and in action. And therefore, that's a very good suggestion. And therefore, we could think. You know this very well. We have got this fantastic cohort of AAAS fellows.
Right.
Might we do something with those AAAS fellows also who are spending time at NSF? Can they go and spend some time in place in HBCU and bring that wealth of knowledge back to NSF and back, in addition to our program officers and other IPAs also thinking about this? So most certainly something that definitely, that you raise this, these are very, very important and interesting suggestions that can help strengthen experience skill.
Well, I will always say you've just set the tone, because when I look at the participants list and the people I know, you've already come into the homes and offices of over 65 to 70 HBCUs of the 101 that are there. So I think you're the first director to do that. Thank you to Zoom.
No, thanks. Not only to thanks to you, because you constantly motivate us, inspire us to do better every day. And so this is your invitation. I just don't want people to forget that. I want all the people to know here, you've got a fantastic leader who's championing on behalf every day at NSF and making us learn more. So, but I want to say this because you brought this up. I am eager that this should not just be a virtual thing. I'm eager, Dr. McCrary, that you and I will partner and will physically go and visit these campuses and have listening sessions. That I know that we can do that. Hopefully the time will come soon. And I am eager to do that. As I said to the other response, there is no better way of learning than actually being there. And so I welcome that opportunity also with being with you.
Well, Dr. Panchanathan, you can count on it. And I will also put the challenge out to my fellow board members. Dr. Eleanor Cho, I have to give her a lot of credit. She has
absolutely, she's fantastic, fantastic leader.
She has done fantastic work. And so I'll also put that out to my colleagues to go out to some HBCUs, as we did a couple of years ago. We went out to Xavier. You know, as we close on, we have another question that has just come in. You talked about the fantastic programs that NSF has been doing with HBCUs and MSIs, TCUs. I want to give a shout out to Karen Marangell and her team. They've done a fantastic job. But also, why you consider some big and bold initiatives. And I know I'm talking to the right person, because every time I talk to you, it's about big and bold. And this is what our country needs, a leader like you who's big and bold. Something like the NIH Build program, which started under Francis Collins, who I know you recently spoke with in 2014, because it's all about sustainability. And if these programs, which are like 50 million over 10 years per institution, have been extremely successful starting in 2014, where they only chose about 10 or 12 universities, both HBCUs and HSIs and TCUs, but it helped really develop undergraduate talent that could then be a pipeline to the PWI institutions, who are also partners. And we've had some great allies. I just have to give a shout out to, the people like Laura Weiss at Penn State, at Daryl Pines at University of Maryland. Yes. These people have been very, very good. Might we see NSF have a program like this?
No, this is an excellent question. And, as we look at changing the landscape, we are considering good ideas such as this one. In fact, Dr. McCrary, I spoke with Dr. Rabosky, Freeman Rabosky, the president of UMBC a few weeks back, and he talked about the success they have had to the STEM Build at UMBC program. I know that NIH has had a lot of success with their 10 build sites. I know that. So the bottom line is that we need to do everything we can do to build capacity in the workforce. And that means doing things boldly, as you said. And yes, and I want NSF to co-produce these programs in a way that is going to best achieve the results we are after. Talking with people like you and President Rabosky and many more will help us develop the ideas that can contextualize to NSF even better as we think about the build program. The answer is yes, yes.
Yeah, and I would also call out, if you ever get a chance, talk to Dr. David Wilson at Morgan State, or in his VPR, a good friend of mine, Willie May. They were a recipient when I was there of the Build program we got in 2014, and they've done an excellent job by partnering with Johns Hopkins University and other universities to build this pipeline of students. So also they have done an excellent job when you get a chance. I want to close on one note. You bring so much energy to the game. I just wanted to know, are you a coffee or tea drinker?
So thank you for that question. I am a chai tea drinker. And Dr. McCrary, you and I have shared drinks together in our NSB days. And I look forward to, having chai with you.
Well, the reason I bring it up is the reason I bring it up, I assume you use a little bit of sugar.
Yes, I do.
And the reason I bring that up is, during the 1830s, there was a Black man named Norbert Rillieux. He was a Creole from Louisiana. And at the time, the way sugar was made off the plantations was the Jamaica train process, where you had to really press the cane leaves and heat it at a very high temperature. A lot of slaves were maimed and hurt in this process. And he came along and made a multi-evaporator process that is still used today. If you go to Baltimore to the Domino plant, that's what they use. So I just wanted to know, next time you have your chai tea, or anyone out here, there's a Black man in your coffee cup.
Oh, I would call it an inspiration. That inspiration that will inspire me to remember to serve better.
That's right.
Serve better. And, Vic, if I can call you at the end, Vic.
Yes.
You are an inspiration. And my friend, I'm so grateful that we had this wonderful hour together. And let this be a beginning for doing a lot more of this in the future. And hopefully next time, we'll also have our very dear friend, our chair, Honorable Chair, Ellen Ochoa, joining us and doing this together. so that we can all show that HBCUs, I mean, we all talk about HBCUs, we all talk about how can we make rapid progress, but I want everybody to know who are in this call today that, your partnership is exceedingly important. We are going to get it done. It's not whether we are going to get it done. We are going to get it done. Okay. How fast we get it done is what we need to figure out.
And I want to thank you for all the compliments, but I did not do this. I had the support of my team at UDC led by President Ron Mason, my fellow VPRs in the HBCUs in the past, and my board colleagues. And obviously we keep mentioning Ellen because she's just been fantastic. But I think I want you to know that we are here with you to help you to take this mission forward for our nation's HBCUs, not only to build research capacity, but always to help develop diverse domestic STEM talent. Because one thing, as I always say, teamwork leads to dream work.
Absolutely.
And we are a serious team. And none of these things happen by ourselves, but we all work together. And so with that, I want to say thank you for being our keynote address for our UDC Research Week 2021 Lunchtime Learning Seminar. And I look forward to future opportunities. And to the folks in the audience, thank you for your attendance and continue on. Research Week will continue for the rest of the week. And please be out there, go out there and spread the message that Director Panchanathan has said, and give your support through your congressmen, through your chancellors and other, that NSF is here 2021 about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the vital role that our HBCUs play in our nation's science and engineering ecosystem. And with that, I want to thank all of you. And again, I humbly thank you, Dr. Panchanathan, for an excellent, excellent talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.